Welcome to Discovering. Tonight, a look at some of the interesting things you can find while spending time in the woods. Some of them fun, and some of them a little scary.
And this bear was standing there. He was already eating on my buck.
Kristen visits the Sunnyside Camp in the western UP. Sit back and relax. It's Monday night and time for Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
You don't have to spend much time in the outdoors to realize we share the woods with a variety of creatures, and some seem to be happy to have us.
Yeah, this is pretty unique. An old partridge, little partridge that comes and meets you whenever you're walking around out here. Years ago, my dad had a bird like that. He'd hear the tractor coming down the old woods road and the bird would come in here, and that was probably 40 years ago. And my dad is long past, but we're running into this partridge, a partridge again this year, and he seems to like people. He comes in, and if you can get him close enough, a lot of times he'll jump on your shoulder or your leg if you sit down, or sometimes even on your head, on your hat. Can get aggressive, hopefully you don't pick you in the eye, you know, but take your chances with him. A buddy of mine says, that's your dad, because years ago my dad had a bird like that, and it's pretty neat if it is him. Yeah, it's pretty unique.
The more time you spend in the woods, the more likely you are to encounter something unique. And some of the encounters may make the hair stand up on the back of your neck.
Well, it started out, I didn't know the bear was even there on November 11th on a Monday. I go in on Tuesday the next day to check the cameras, and I find my Primo's double bull blind smashed down to the ground, and tooth marks in it and claw marks in it all over the place. It took me a good 15 minutes to get it set back up. I actually wondered if I was even going to be able to use the blind again. So I got it set up, and it was a repeat story every single day. Hit the same thing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. 4 days in a row the bear smashed my blind down. So I was kind of worried about sitting in there opening day. But nothing's going to stop me from sitting in that shack, because I think about deer hunting 365 days a year. So when I finally was sitting in the shack on opening day, I realized, oh, okay, here's why the bear was smashing my shack down. And I had a stick of Evercalm deer herd scent, and I had that smeared on some walls inside my shack just for a cover scent. Well, every time that bear would walk by, he gets to my shack and he can smell a herd of deer in there. So that's why he was smashing my shack down. So I'll never use Evercalm inside my shack again, no matter the weather. But anyway, a decent buck come in about a 15-inch spread on opening night, about 5 minutes before shooting was over, and I decided to take him. He ran about 40 yards only, and I heard him crash into the woods. So I waited a few minutes. I went down there with my flashlight, started tracking. I already knew I had him, but I am colorblind, so I have a tough time following red. So I basically practiced on this deer. I found him, put my tag on him. He was a 7, not the 8 that I thought he was. So I dragged him out to the road, to the trail's edge, and I went back to camp and got my otter sled, and I headed back there and walked over. Big hill I hunt on the other side, so I'm going up the hill, and I get over the hill, and I'm on the other side, halfway down, about even with my shack, and I can see 2 eyes down there where my buck is, and I didn't think nothing of it. I'm just gonna walk down there and take my buck back and put him in the sled and go. I get down there, and I'm about 3 feet away. I'm looking down, and I was confused. The snow was there, the imprints of the buck was there, and all the blood from where it had leaked out of him, but the deer was gone. And I was so confused, I was trying to figure out what the heck is going on, when all of a sudden I hear, hoof, 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 like that 3 times, this loud huffing noise. And I turned my flashlight on high, on my headlamp, and this bear was standing there. He was already eating on my buck. He took 4 or 5 bites out of the hindquarters. He had the deer on his back and was eating on the inside. He's a giant bear. He probably goes in a 400 to 450 pound range. He probably only had 4 or 5, maybe 6 bites out of the hindquarters by the time I got there. So I was lucky I didn't stay at camp and have a shot in a beer like I normally do before I go to get my deer, because even a few more minutes, eating more of that buck, he might not have let it go. He stands up on his hind legs. I got my backpack on with my pistol in my backpack. No time to take that off to even try to protect myself. So the only thing I could do was holler as loud as I could, and I took the sled, and I'm 26 feet from him. I'm shaking this thing as hard as I could possibly shake it. And I'm yelling at the top of my lungs, "You're not gonna take my buck!" And I must have yelled that probably 10 times at least, 10 or 12. And that bear, he stood up and he kind of did a herky-jerk motion and put his paw on the tree to balance himself. Well, I had my light on high in his face. He just, after about 2 seconds, he just turned and whirled and went back into the swamp at probably a half of a jog speed. So I'm wondering, now he's out of the distance of my light shining. Is he standing back there or what? So I figured this is my chance. So I ran up there, grabbed my buck, threw him in my sled as fast as I could go. And I just, all in one motion, turned around, put the rope over my shoulder and started running. And I got back out to where I originally dropped the buck at the trail's edge. And I never stopped running. I ran over the top of the hill, down the hill the other side, across the field. I grabbed my 4-wheeler and came back and drove the 4-wheeler there. Normally that's a 7-minute walk. It took me 2 minutes according to my trail cameras, so I was moving pretty good for a 56-year-old man. But I got my buck back, cleaned him out, and I couldn't wait to get back to camp and tell everybody the story. And most people wondering, are you crazy to even sit in that deer blind after a bear smashing it down 4 days in a row? Yeah, I probably am crazy. Crazy for deer hunting. You'll never stop me from being out there.
I met Jim, Mike, Paul, Joe, and DC back in 2014 when I interviewed them about losing their camp in the Ottawa, and I've been back to visit with them a few times since. Not having a camp to get together at was not an option for these 5.
2 of these guys I knew since high school, so almost 50 years. And the other 2 guys I know at Tech, so about 40 plus years. So We've known each other a long time, this group.
Is that good?
You tell me.
Well, it was 2009 when we bought the 40, because we knew the lease was going to be up.
We knew it was here, private 40, and our goal was to not be without a camp, so.
So that year we bought the 40, we all threw some money in a pool to get started, and it took us about 5 or 6 years to swallow the cost of the land. And 3 years before, I think in 14, leases were up in 17, so we started clearing land and getting going up here then. Stayed at the old camp, and four-wheelers back and forth for lunch, dinner, evenings.
Improved the road coming in.
Yeah, had to do a lot of road work.
Gary Gustafson did the road work for us a couple of times.
All the while hanging on to the slim hope that something would change the Forest Service course and we'd be able to work something out on our old place. But that shot clock came and went like we thought it would.
Yeah. Thankfully, we were hunting with a bunch of go-getters, and we all decided, hey, let's go get this done. So we jumped on it. But it proved out, and I think the biggest thing for all of us, be tempting at a time like that to sit around the bar with your buddies complaining about what happened to you. And
we did some of that.
Oh, yeah. Moaning, but then what are you going to do about it? At some point you say, what are we going to do? And so, like Joe said, we got going about the property and we made our plans and got to work. So 5 guys all over 60 built this place by ourselves. Well, not by ourselves. We had help from several friends and a lot of outside help, but we didn't hire a contractor. We got it all done. And it was really healing for all of us to go through the process of planning, building, being busy. It moved our minds on from the negative and on to the positive.
It's kind of bittersweet in the sense that, there's a little bit of bitterness about what we don't have anymore, the river. But some of the sweetness that's come out of it is, the friendships that have grown much more solid generally over, because it was like over 3 years we were coming up here 3 or 4 times a year for a long work week to, build this.
We spent more time together on this than we ever did
when my wife tallied up how many weeks of vacation I've taken to camp, then you want to go hunt. But anyway, so there's the bitterness, there's still a little bit of, why couldn't something different have come out of that? But the sweetness is, what we've done, and things like, we repurposed this big window from the old camp. The sauna building has the shakes that were hand split that were on the old camp.
And out of those 3,800, I don't know how many we moved over here. We just took all the best ones. Most of them it took to do this building.
And this is pretty much the same layout as our old camp, but we made each room a little bigger. That was our repurposed kitchen sink from the old camp. The same stove. I don't know if you remember at our old camp, one of the gags we had was inside the door was a light switch that didn't work. There was no electricity.
Come on.
So now we have electricity that the light switch actually works, if the generator's on.
The famous pink buck pole has been moved to the Sunnyside Camp too.
Oh, and getting that buck pole out and bringing it up here was no picnic either, eh, Dan? He's up on a ladder, and we decided we had to take the top off.
Yeah,
right?
we were
trying to lift the top off because it's a 3-piece.
It'd been rusted together all those years.
I whacked that thing with the sledgehammer and that flying squirrel came up there.
That surprised us a little bit.
One went out one end, his bell was rung, he crashed into the shrub behind us.
We were able to build a good woodshed, and just kind of pool our talents and get a nicer camp going. So we have a screen porch. We never screened in the porch at the old camp, so we have a place to sit outside and be out of the bugs during the spring and early summer. That's helpful.
We have multiple decks. We have the sun deck. We have the grilling deck that's covered without a screen. And we have the sun deck for the tanning, and then the loading deck across the front. So we kind of went
we made things easy on ourselves. We made a chunk of removable railing out there, so when we come in, you can just back the pickup right up to the deck, lower the tailgate, and everything goes right out onto the deck. That works easy. Lots of amenities that we didn't have at the other camp that we are really enjoying in our advanced stage.
You guys are old.
We used to have to carry water up the river from up that bank, and it was, somebody was going to die doing that one of these days. So here we put in a cistern, we collect water off the roof, we put some sumps in the cistern to power water up to the sink, and that really is working well. We have never even come close to running out of water here. We put a 1,000-gallon tank in the ground, and we put a V-shaped trench all along this wall of the cabin. So every bit of snow and water that comes off the roof hits that V-trench. We put some poly in it and some sock pipe, 4-inch sock pipe in the bottom, and sloped it to the cistern. The cistern overflows when it gets too much water. And every time we show up here, that thing is just topped right off. 1,000 gallons of fresh, clear water. It's crystal clear. We don't drink the water, but it has filtered through about 18 inches of sand and gravel and filter cloth, so it stays nice and clean. And we just haul up what little we need to drink, and that's all the time it takes to fill up 5 gallons right there.
The old camp was called Camp with a K. This one has a new name.
It's the Sunnyside Camp. We thought that'd be an apt name. We like hanging around the bar, the Sunnyside. And we asked Dad if he minded, and he said, "No, I don't care. Go ahead." So
I think for 40 years.
The things we've been talking about not complaining about what's wrong, but pursuing something better. We looked on the sunny side of the issue and made something happen.
If you look in the plat book, the ownership is Sunnyside LLC.
We're the only one up and down this stretch of the river that rebuilt. But there weren't that many opportunities to rebuild, places to get where you could do it. So we were fortunate to find this 40 in here.
Nice and close. Nice and close to where we were.
Yeah. Only a 5-minute four-wheeler ride to the old camp. It's pretty easy.
12-minute walk.
Road permitting. Jim and Paul traveled up from Carolina. We got a lot of deer. That was back when we could get doe permits. And so we were having a butchering party.
There were 2 weasels, and they came right inside the camp with us. They were running around between our legs while we were butchering on the table. One of them went upstairs to check out the loft. There was a deer carcass we had just...
well, they were hanging like this.
Yeah, we'd taken all the quarters off and everything we could get off of the carcass. We laid it on the ground there that we're getting ready to dispose of. And we were looking out the kitchen window a couple hours later, and it started to wiggle. It was moving. We were both looking at it. It was spooky. All of a sudden, this weasel pokes his head out with a deer ear in his mouth from inside and takes off. The old one was built late 70s, early 80s, and we just threw it up. We went to Upco, and we got the lease and hauled in some lumber and went to it.
Chainsaw cuts, everything.
Yeah, this one we actually brought in a generator and had to get building permits, and you can't just throw up a camp anymore. You got to do it right. So
we get to pay taxes now.
Oh boy, we did before, but they were on leased land, so they were negligible. And this one's being treated like a residence. So
another sweet bitterness was all this time we spent up here and we worked our butts off. We didn't get to fish much. We didn't get to hunt often because we were trying to get something that. We kind of had a joking thing about our contract that like after the second or third stint where we'd work for 10 days with no time off, we said, okay, next stint, everybody gets a half a day to do whatever you want. You can sleep in, you can fish, whatever like that. So everyone felt guilty about using that half day. So the joke became, are we banking, carryovers,
We probably have 2 weeks built
we have about 2 weeks vacation time to us here, but.
Jim was kind of the yard boss for the whole project, so he didn't get even if you sat down for a minute, he'd come up with something for you to do.
What's that mean? I stood in the yard and told you what to do with that?
I saw you up on the top.
We had an interesting mix of talents among the 5 of us here. Everybody was good at something, and between us, we kind of covered all the aspects of what we needed to do. So it worked out handy. We had enough tools and enough talents between us, and
couldn't have done it without each of us, is basically what it comes down to.
No, one or two guys could have afforded what we, or at least at our income level.
But what we have
no
is
way.
amazingly cheap because of the scrounging and all of our own labor. We salvaged barnwood out of the old Beaver Slide camp. We salvaged some other parts out of the old Doe Haven camp. Those guys weren't going to use them. We said, well, we'll take them over. We're not proud.
We dug it out of the ground.
Cement ball and all on the bottom.
Cement ball and all. And then we planted it with the cement ball and all.
DC put it well one day. We were talking about with a bunch of type A kind of personalities in this camp, at what point do we quit working and shift and go enjoying? We've been doing 10-day stints 3 or 4 times a summer for 3 years in here. And go. You're lining up what you're going to do, getting the building materials, getting everybody here, fuel, generators, blah, 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 and you keep going. And when you get here, it's such an effort to get everything and everybody here. You go to maximize the trip. At what point are we going to come here and not work? It's like we're going to shift gears. And DC put it beautifully. He said, yeah, what we got to do is instead of coming here and trying to do 5 things in a day, we need to come here and do 1 thing in 5 days. I thought, that's it. That was well put.
And that's pretty much what we've done in the last 5 days.
Yeah.
One thing.
So we're finally to that point.
We're running out of projects.
Yeah.
We're down to arguing about decorating.
Yeah, we had a camp meeting the other day, yesterday.
Yeah, our shareholder meeting was yesterday.
Spring work stint, what's on our agenda? We're scrounging to find things to do. We've got everything done.
Reorganize.
Let's see, we're gonna wash the windows.
Yeah.
Organize.
Take inventory of what's in the crawl space.
Yeah.
Yeah, we we're able to strengthen our friendships and move on with a place to gather and hunt and bring our families. And we've got everything the old camp had and more, except the river. But we can go visit.
We know where it is.
Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next week right here on Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.